Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are back at the table, stacks of notes in front of us, ready to peel back another layer of history.
It's good to be back, and today we have a fascinating stack of papers.
We do. And, usually when we talk about history, especially church history, we tend to think in these huge sweeping eras, the pioneer era, the modern era.
Right.
But today, we're zooming in on a very specific, very intense slice of time.
We're looking at just 18 years.
18 years, specifically 1905 to 1923. Now, for the history buffs listening, you know that the world outside was going absolutely crazy during this time.
Oh, for sure.
You got the build-up to World War I, you have the war itself, you have empires collapsing, maps being redrawn.
It was a time of global upheaval, certainly.
But for the subject of our deep dive today, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, this 18-year window feels less like a collapse and more like an explosion.
That is a very apt description. We're looking at Section 8 of the Church Heritage Manual, and the title they give this section really says it all.
Expansion in every direction?
Exactly.
Sounds like a military campaign.
In many ways it was, but, not with guns. This is the era where the movement stops being a primarily American phenomenon and truly becomes a global entity.
So what's our mission today? Because I'm looking at these notes and I see lists of names, obscure islands, structural changes, and even the death of the movement's most prominent figure.
Right. How do we make sense of it all?
Yeah, how do we unpack this?
Well, our mission is to unpack the how. How does a relatively small, concentrated group of believers transform into a worldwide organization in less than 2 decades?
Okay.
We aren't just going to list dates. We want to understand the people who packed their bags, the lay members who invented new ways to fund the work, and the leaders who built the systems like youth ministry that are still running today.
So it's the story of the startup becoming a
global corporation, basically. Yeah. If you want to use business terms, yes. This is the scaling phase.
Okay, let's jump right into the deep end then. The year is 1905. The source material kicks off with this phrase, "to all the world."
That was the rallying cry.
Now, previously, the church had sent people to Europe, maybe Australia, but starting in 1905, it seems like the strategy shifted to, well, everywhere else.
Exactly. They began targeting what we would call unentered territories. And when you look at the list in the source, it's breathless. It's one after another.
Well, let's look at the map. Who goes where? Because these aren't just dots on a map. These were real people walking into completely unknown situations.
Take the Philippines, for example. In 1905, R.A. Caldwell enters the country.
Okay.
He is essentially cold calling a nation. He's there to sell books, to make contacts. And just a year later, in 1906, J.L. McElhenney follows up to solidify that work.
And that's just one country.
Right. Then look at Europe, but not the easy parts. In 1907, W.E. Howell enters Greece.
And then you have South America. I see the name F.A. Stahl highlighted here.
Stahl is a giant in this history. In 1909, he went to South America, but he didn't just stay in the cities. He went to the Highland Indians, as the text calls them.
The indigenous people living high in the Andes.
That's right. And this brings a specific image to mind. This isn't just preaching in a church hall.
No, this is rugged, high-altitude travel, dealing with isolation.
Absolutely. Stahl's work was holistic. It was medical, educational, spiritual. He was building civilization infrastructure in places the government barely touched.
And then we have the Pacific, the island fields.
This might be the most logistically difficult area of all. You're talking about thousands of miles of ocean. But in 1912, C.H. Parker enters the New Hebrides.
Oh.
And 2 years later, in 1914, G.F. Jones enters the Solomon Islands.
1914, that is a significant year.
The start of the Great War.
So right when the world is locking down and borders are closing, G.F. Jones is getting on a boat to the Solomons. That's commitment.
It shows the priority. The mission superseded the geopolitical situation.
There's one other region mentioned in this expansion phase that I found really moving. The northward expansion in Africa.
Yes, this is a classic example of moving the frontier. Up until this point, the church had a strong base in South Africa.
Right.
But during this period, they decided to push north, going through the British colonies into East Africa.
The source lists a string of names here. Tar, Campbell, Stockel, Anderson, Sparrow.
These were families. And they weren't taking trains or planes. They were often moving by ox wagon, trekking into the interior to establish mission stations.
And they established a key institution there, didn't they?
Seleucia College. It became a hub for the work in that region.
There is a detail in the notes about Seleucia that actually made me pause. It mentions the graveyard.
It is a sobering detail. The source notes that the graveyard at Salisi is full of the markers of these early pioneers.
That really drives it home. We talk about expansion and growth like it's a strategy game. But for the Andersons, the Sparrows, the Campbells, this cost them their lives.
It was a total sacrifice. Disease, lack of medical care, sheer exhaustion. When they often went for life.
And the institutions we see today, like Salisi University.
They're built on that level of commitment. It changes how you look at a college campus when you know it's in the soil.
It certainly does. Okay, so we have this massive geographic push. People are scattering to the four winds. But this raises a very practical, very boring, but very necessary question.
Money.
Exactly. You cannot send families to the Andes or the Solomons on good intentions alone. You need a funding stream.
And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn, because usually when an organization needs money, the leadership in the boardroom comes up with a plan.
Sure, they levy a tax or they start a capital campaign.
But that's not what happened here.
No.
No. The solution came from a lay member, a regular guy in the pews named Jasper Wayne.
I love this story. Tell us about the Jasper Wayne experiment.
So rewind to 1903. Jasper Wayne has a stack of signs of the Times magazines. Now, typically you might just hand these out as literature. But Jasper gets an idea.
Okay.
He starts giving them to friends, neighbors, even strangers. And he says, essentially, this is what we are doing to help people. Would you be willing to give a donation to support missions?
It sounds so simple to us now. It's basically door-to-door fundraising.
It is. But at the time, it was a novel concept to ask the general public, people who weren't members of the church, to support the church's global work.
He wasn't selling the magazine.
No, he was giving the magazine and asking for a partnership in the mission.
And clearly, he didn't get chased off too many porches.
Quite the opposite. The source says the idea simply caught on. It worked. It started with him, spread to his local church, and then the leadership saw the potential and said, this is it.
And this became the in-gathering plan.
Correct. It became an annual global campaign. For decades, this was the primary way the church raised funds for humanitarian and educational work.
And it all started because one guy thought, I wonder if my neighbors would like to help.
It's a great example of innovation coming from the bottom up, not the top down. Precisely. So we have the map filling up, we have the funding model sorted out, but there's another demographic that the church started paying attention to during this era.
Right.
And honestly, if you grew up in the church, this is probably the part of history that impacted you the most personally.
You're talking about the youth.
I am. It seems like between 1907 and 1923, the church woke up and realized, wait a minute, we have all these kids, and we need to do something with them besides just telling them to sit still.
That was the shift. Before this, there was no organized youth department. But in 1907, that changed. The General Conference Youth Department was formally organized.
And they appointed a director.
Yes, M.E. Kern as the first director. And they didn't just appoint a leader and sit back. They immediately started churning out tools.
It was an era of rapid content creation.
Very rapid. That same year, 1907, the Central Union produced the Morning Watch.
A little calendar with the daily Bible verses.
A staple for generations. Then came the Standard of Attainment in 1907. This was a certification program proving you knew your Bible doctrines and church history.
Sounds a bit like school.
It was rigorous. They wanted the youth to be grounded. Then you had reading courses in 1908, junior society lessons in 1914, and the junior Bible year in 1917.
So they were building a curriculum for discipleship. But what I find really fun in the source material are the experiments that started happening outside the classroom.
The outdoor component?
Yeah, the stuff that looks a lot like scouting.
Yes. You have to remember, the Boy Scouts were starting up around this time globally, and Adventist parents and leaders were looking for their own version.
The source lists some great names for these early clubs.
Oh, they are very of their time. In 1911, in Maryland, you had the Tacoma Indians Club.
And then in Tennessee.
In 1919, the Mission Scouts.
You can see the evolution. They're trying to combine the spiritual mission with woodcraft, hiking, and nature study.
Exactly. And this all culminates with the arrival of a very important figure in 1920, Harriet Holt.
Who was she?
She was appointed as the junior youth specialist, and she is really the one who took all these loose experiments and systematized them.
She built the ladder.
She did. In 1922, she introduced what she called progressive classes.
These are the names we still use today, right?
Most of them. For the juniors, what she called the JMV Society, she created the classes of friend and companion.
Okay, those are familiar.
And for the leaders, she created the Comrade Band. The levels were Comrade and Master Comrade.
Master Comrade. I have to say, that sounds a little geopolitical to a modern ear.
It certainly has a different ring to it now. The source notes that these were eventually renamed Guide and Master Guide, which are the terms used in Pathfinders today.
But the structure earning badges, progressing through levels, that was Harriet Holt's genius in the early 20s.
Absolutely.
So we have the youth getting organized, we have the missions expanding, but there's another pillar of the church that was undergoing a major reconstruction during this time.
The medical work.
Yes. This is crucial. We have to remember the context. The famous Battle Creek Sanitarium and the medical school there were no longer under church control.
Right, they had separated, so there was a vacuum.
A massive one. The church believes in health as a right arm of the message, but they had no medical school. So they looked west.
California dreaming.
In 1910, the College of Medical Evangelists opened in California.
Which we know today as Loma Linda University.
Correct. And shortly after, in 1913, they opened a clinic in Los Angeles, which grew into the White Memorial Hospital.
Right, and the source mentions something really interesting about the reputation of these places. They weren't just religious hospitals.
They gained respect from the secular medical world.
They did. The notes specifically mention that the American Medical Association, the AMA, eventually recognized the institution's success. And what did they recognize them for?
Helping people stop smoking.
Exactly. At a time when smoking was still socially acceptable and even advertised by doctors, Adventists were running clinics to help people quit.
And the medical establishment had to tip their hat and say, you guys know what you're doing.
It gave them scientific credibility. It proved that the health message wasn't just theology. It was good medicine.
Okay, I want to pause and zoom out for a second. We've described a lot of growth. New countries, new funding, new youth departments, new medical schools. If I'm the president of the General Conference in 1913, I'm panicking.
Why is that?
Because how do you manage all of this? You can't run a global organization from an office in Washington, D.C. with the same structure you used when you were just a few churches in the Midwest.
You are absolutely right. The administrative structure was breaking under the weight of the expansion. They needed a new way to govern.
So what did they do?
In 1913, they introduced a major structural change, the division.
Break that down for us. What is a division?
Essentially, they carved the oil field into large regions, European division, North American division, and so on. But the key innovation was the leadership. The president of a division wasn't just a regional manager. He was made a vice president of the General Conference.
So he had real executive power.
Exactly. It meant they could make decisions on the ground in Europe or South America without having to wait for a letter to travel all the way to headquarters and back. It was decentralization.
It allowed them to be nimble.
And it also changed the way they met. The source talks about the General Conference sessions, the big business meetings.
They used to be every year, right?
Yes, annual sessions. But imagine trying to get delegates from the Solomon Islands, South Africa, and the Andes to travel to the U.S. every single year in 1915.
It would be impossible and bankrupting.
So they spaced it out. It moved to biennial every 2 years, then quadrennial every 4. The source notes that eventually, in 1970, it settled on the quinquennial schedule every 5 years.
Which is what is used today.
That's right. But the shift happened here. The logistics of the To All the World mission forced the calendar to change. Growth requires new structures.
Now, amidst all this bustling growth, the building, the traveling, the organizing, there is a quiet, somber moment in the timeline. A very significant sunset.
1915.
The death of Ellen White.
She had been the constant. From the very beginning in the 1840s through all the changes, she was the voice of guidance.
What does the source tell us about her passing?
She died on July 16, 1915, at the age of 87. It marked the definitive end of the pioneer era. The source quotes her last words, which I think are beautiful.
There were they.
I know in whom I have believed.
That's a powerful final testimony. And the notes also throw some staggering numbers at us regarding her life's work.
The statistics are mind-boggling. Over 100,000 pages of writing, 4,000 magazine articles, 8,000 manuscripts and letters, and over 120 volumes of books.
She was a writing machine.
She was, but I think the most critical insight in this section isn't about how much she wrote, but how she positioned her writing in relation to the Bible, especially at the end.
You're thinking the 1909 General Conference.
Yes, her last General Conference session. She stands before the delegates. She's an old woman now, and she doesn't hold up her own books. She holds out her Bible.
And she says,
"Brethren, I commend to you this book, The source emphasizes that she reinforced the Bible as the only rule of faith and practice.
That is such a crucial distinction. She wasn't trying to replace Scripture.
No, she was trying to point people back to it. She was securing the foundation before she left. She wanted the church to be grounded in the Bible, not just in her personality.
So Ellen White passes in 1915. The world is at war. The church is just restructured into divisions. And as we come to the end of this 18-year period, around 1922, we see the leadership baton passed to a new generation.
Yes, the transition from A.G. Daniels to W.A. Spicer.
Now, Daniels had been the leader for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But Spicer seems to be the perfect avatar for this new global church.
He really was. Daniels was a builder and administrator, but Spicer was a missionary statesman. He had served in England, he had served in India, he had chaired the Foreign Missions Board. He knew the world.
There's a quote from him in the source that I think is just wild. It's about his travel habits.
I love this quote. He said, "Only 4 years between 1900 and 1940 did not find me on a trip abroad."
Think about that. 40 years. Only 4 of them were spent at home.
And remember, this is before jet travel. This is steamships and trains. He spent his life in transit.
It tells you everything you need to know about the church's focus. The president wasn't sitting in an ivory tower in Washington. He was out there, in the field.
The church had become a worldwide entity, and Spicer embodied that reality. He wasn't just managing the files, he was visiting the family.
So let's try to tie all this together. We've looked at the years 1905 to 1923. It's a short window, but it feels incredibly dense.
It's the transformative window.
We saw the map explode with new territories, the Philippines, Greece, the Andes, the Pacific Islands, Africa.
We saw the funding model shift from internal tithe to the global ingathering outreach, thanks to Jasper Wayne.
We saw the invention of the youth department, giving us the roots of Pathfinders and the JMB classes.
We saw the medical work rebuild and gain scientific credibility at Loma Linda.
We saw the administration decentralize into divisions to handle the massive growth.
And we saw the passing of the torch from the original pioneers, like Ellen White, to the new global statesmen, like Spicer.
If you are a member of this movement today, or just someone looking at it from the outside, almost everything you recognize as Adventist structure crystallized right here.
It's the bedrock. It's the moment the movement grew up.
So here's my final thought for you and for you listening. When we look back at 1905, the mission was very clear. It was geographic. There's an island over there. We have no one on it. Get on a boat.
Right. To all the world meant physical territory.
But today, the map is full. You can see every inch of the planet from space. We can fly anywhere in 24 hours. The blank spots aren't on the map anymore.
How the question changes.
Exactly. If the spirit of 1905 was entering unentered territory, what is the unentered territory today?
That is the million-dollar question.
Is it still geographic? Or is it cultural? Is it the digital world? Is it the secular mind?
And perhaps more importantly, do we still have the Jasper Wayne spirit? Are we waiting for a vote from the top to solve it? Or are there regular people in the pews willing to just try and experiment?
History suggests the breakthrough usually comes from the person with a crazy idea knocking on a neighbor's door.
Indeed it does.
Something to think about. Thanks for diving into the archives with us.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.